Garmaga, thank you, Chair, and welcome to all our speakers. We have a fine presentations here this morning with us, so thank you so much for your time. And I suppose I might just direct a few questions as I go, and I think we have about 8 minutes. So I hope that, and anyone, if you have time at the end to join in, please do. So I suppose again, to say thank you to Dr. Shoga. I suppose Science Foundation Ireland would have a great knowledge of it and a great understanding and appreciation of what's looking to be delivered. Particularly, I suppose, as well at the Irish Research Council, having worked in, I suppose, in UI Galway in the research office there, and from the Irish Precarity Network. I must admit, it was my first time, but I would have been one of those precarious researchers, maybe precarious now as well, but precarious in terms of, I would have worked on Horizon 2020 as a research sort of project manager on one of those awards within the college. Very conscious that non-exchequer funding, of course, drives the fact that we are able to, I suppose, offer that type of experience for our researchers and our postdocs and our master's students that otherwise would not happen if we did not have that success with our PIs and principal investigators, I suppose, in all of our colleges and third level across the country, but also very, very conscious of the fact that it is not a way to have these continuous contracts non-stop, whereas when you can get an award, be it for 5 years, you've got 5 years and that you're hopefully in position for 5 years if you're a researcher or a master's student. But then depending on the type of research as well, they're taken on at different times. It might be that the postdoc supervisor type role is taken on first, and the master's comes in maybe later on if they're doing statistical work or things like this. So there's different methods that colleges and I suppose PIs have to manage when they're looking at their workforce. And I suppose this also happens in many other industries as well. So third level, in some ways, the more successful we are at bringing in non-exchequer funding, the more crucial it is in terms of driving excellence. And when we have excellence in this country in terms of research professorships and so on that we would invite, then we will attract excellence from across the world to come to Ireland, which is what we want to see. I suppose, Dr. Shoga, if I might just ask, and again, very nice to meet you, but you spoke a little bit about the importance of doctoral level education, I suppose, and I mean that's been crucial, I suppose, in terms of the SFI funding model, and how important that is for Ireland as a society and the world as a society. I suppose in this model coming forward, how would you see that we could improve the opportunities for people who come out with PhDs? So in other words, sometimes we have our PhDs coming out of our universities and they are not they're not taken up immediately by industry. How do some of our more traditional universities get over that sort of hill that sometimes other universities are better able to navigate with more practical maybe placements and so on? Ms. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Eunice, is that correct? Thank you. I was very interested in your presentation and thank you, I was listening to it, and I very much am aware of the difficulty when it comes to women, particularly in sort of more short-term and temporary contracts. I suppose I would have been aware of Women in Technology. WITS, I think there was an organisation as well, maybe previous to Women in Research. But how do you see that with this model that we can support women in a better way in terms of, like, you'll see that their colleges now have developed this sort of more gender, their diversity. We have gender equality officers, we have diversity and inclusion officers. Is that working? And I suppose, could I ask you maybe for one or two examples or how you think it might improve? Because I know from NUI Galway, they have done a huge body of work in terms of rolling out even, the consent framework when it comes to sort of harassment type issues as well, that unfortunately we see more and more of at third level. If I might as well with Ms. Smith as well, sorry, from the ESRI, thank you so much. I would come from Ballinasloe, Roscommon and East Galway, and absolutely delighted because we would have seen DESH funding coming out, delivering equality of opportunity for schools, particularly at post-primary level, and the importance of that in supporting students to access third level education. So for example, the HERE and DARE programmes I know are sort of new, but you would have higher education access and disability access. I don't know if you might be able to speak a little bit to that and maybe what supports are coming. And when we see that over 240,000, nearly 250,000 of our students are accessing some form of delivering equality of opportunity supports, be it smaller class sizes, more teaching supports, or more supports when it comes to identifying career opportunities, be it further education and perhaps not going down the traditional educational model. And then on the precarity side, I'd be very welcome to have your thoughts as well on this model. So if we have time, and apologies for taking up so much of it, Garmagat.
Sure. If I might start on the answer, and thank you, Senator, for the question. And this is about how we make the PhDs world class effectively, and that is, there is an onus on us to do that. We've looked at it quite carefully. We spent a lot of time understanding the PhD model, talking to the PhD students, meeting with them pre-pandemic. And one of the things we learned is it's a bit like in everything else. You can't be what you can't see. And we found a lot of our PhDs were not as industry ready as they needed to be. They weren't as ready for that next evolution. It was very much a PhD model designed to create academics in the system, but actually recognising that the vast majority of PhDs go into industry. Many of us have been through that precarity model down through the years, me included, so I know what it's like when you move across. And in the traditional PhD training, you're not necessarily going into industry ready. So some of the things we're looking at is cohort-based training, where you work with a cohort of other PhDs, you work with peers, because it can be a lonely life sometimes if you're working as an isolated PhD. And then we're also looking at industry being part of that training program, where 12 weeks or so of the training is actually with industry partners who actually make the PhDs industry ready. The whole aim here really is to have the world's best PhDs that are sort of able to command the kind of salaries here that they want, that will attract the companies to be here because that's what they come for. They come for the talent. They stay for the talent.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what we need to do. So we are reinventing the PhD model. We're trying to make it as effective as it can be. We're looking to make sure we have those industry partners involved, looking to make sure that it's cohort driven, and then analysing all the aspects around how do we make it accessible from an EDI perspective so that it's accessible to everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I suppose the industry fellowship is another really excellent programme, I suppose, where you can bring people into industry and that they can do a certain project of work, and engage them as well. So I just think it's a great way for PhDs to get an opportunity to work in world-class industry, and then vice versa. The industry also gets access to a world-class academic or a researcher that's come from an excellent institution. Thank you very much, Dr. Shoga. And sorry, Dr. Eunice, if you would like to comment on the parts there.
Yeah, you asked about the gender equality initiatives in universities. Well, I see that there's a lot of training around bias and the hiring committees and HR. But like I said, minorities and women, there are not much measures to build that confidence into them. There should be, like, SFI has these public engagement things, but they should be more directed to women, ethnic minority women, so that they know what are the options out there. Another thing is that I don't think that academic posts are enough. And this is a problem around the world, not just Ireland. We need alternative career paths, and academia should incorporate within their training structures what can be like, for example, for myself, because I was in STEM, I had this option of moving to a research scientist role, which in Ireland industry doesn't have much of. Very few of the companies have it. Even I applied to Google, it was a software engineering role. I did not want a software engineering role. I wanted a research role. So we should be, even in the industry sector, we need to develop more of these roles so that the PhDs can be integrated into the system, and this can be something that maybe IBEC or other company with other employers and other industry can think about.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. I think it's about us. Well, I suppose industry can forge a path, but we forge paths in research. We drive change in research, and research leads the way. Where industry sometimes goes, right, look at what they're doing over there. Actually, I might just take that wonderful pocket of researchers with that excellent PI that did that research, and I might just bring them over here to me. So I think that that's really important. And also in terms of diversity, I just know from anyway Galway, like such a cosmopolitan city, like nearly 1 in 5, and that's down to our university, to the healthcare, to the hospital that's there. So many international researchers, particularly attending university there because of the research professorship programs that are run. So that's really crucial in bringing teams to Ireland. Sorry, Dr. Smith, thank you very much. And yes, sorry, Chair, I know you might chop me in a minute.
Okay, the evaluation period there was some years ago, but it did show some positive benefits from allowing some students in on lower grades and lower points, but some variation in implementation. But interestingly, we saw quite an increase over the pandemic in the proportion of young people from deaf schools making the transition on foot of teacher assessed grades. So
yes,
I mean,
so that benefited students more.
So that benefited students more. But I think we need to be talking about targeting resources to those deaf schools serving the most disadvantaged groups in order to support students. Because at the moment, we don't identify in the way that we identify urban band 1 at primary level. We don't identify the most deprived schools at secondary level to provide them with the additional support.
Well, we'd hope that census now this year is going to drive that change.
So we need to be providing them academic supports, but also socio-emotional supports, because we see that socio-emotional well-being and mental health, well, socio-emotional well-being more broadly than mental health is worse in urban deaf schools.
And hopefully we get the teachers to be involved, the Minister of just come out with her review and report just in the last hour. So hopefully we're going to see that there's going to be a little bit more about, you know, continuous assessment of the Leaving Cert, so and more teacher involvement. Sorry, I don't know. Sorry,
Just
Chair,
very quickly, sorry, on top of what I've already said, very little institution level or national data exists on the outcomes for PhD students. That's a big problem because a PhD involves significant opportunity cost and they're very expensive for people who do it. But whether it's science or the arts and humanities, you get these series of temporary contracts for researchers and there's no clear data on what they end up with, and I think that's a major problem.
So if we have, you know, the tracing, I think in IRC, I think, and in SFI, there's a tracing of where postgrads go or students go, you know, subsequent to these. I think that if that's done by all the universities, that could be a great way to see, like you say, how to improve the situation.
The data is totally insufficient as far as we're aware.
Thank you. Sorry, Gurmeen.
If we just let Dr. Brown just wants to come in for a brief second. Dr. Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and I agree with everything that Senator Dolan has said, and I think what we need collectively is for researchers to be able to see across the landscape where they fit in, and that there are collectively a set of predictable long-term funding schemes at different career stages, and that researchers can access. And I think you mentioned the issue of tracking. There is some good work going on with under the auspices of the National Framework for Doctoral Education. So there's an advisory group there that is doing two pieces of work which I think will be valuable. One is a career tracking project to develop a greater sense and greater insight into where PhDs are going post completion. And then the other area, another project that's been worked on is career profiling. So for people considering taking up a PhD, to have more information about the kinds of roles, the kinds of jobs, both within academia and outside academia, that a PhD gives access to. So I think there are two important pieces of work which will help with this overall agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much.